Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Neil Zipser, the Industry Affairs Manager with the Knox Company. And today we're going to be looking at an issue that unfortunately has become very important in today's world, school safety, and more specifically, ensuring that law enforcement has access during emergencies. Over the past year, Knox celebrated its 50-year anniversary, and most people know Knox as access providing access for fire departments to commercial and residential structures during emergencies. However, law enforcement was not a concern back in 1975 like it is today. As active threats in schools remain a critical concern, administrators and security leaders are prioritizing faster, more coordinated law enforcement response when seconds matter. One approach gaining traction, implementing a Knox Rapid Access program for law enforcement. Last week was the 27th anniversary of the Columbine tragedy. Hard to believe it's been that long ago, but I believe that was probably the first time schools began looking at security protocols. In 2013, the Sandy Hook shooting was another tragic reminder of the importance of the need for schools to harden their facilities. And the Parkland shooting in 2018 was definitely reinforcement as the shooter there walked into an unlocked school building. The Uvalde, Texas shooting in 2022 exposed the issues of law enforcement not having access to internal classrooms as well. Unfortunately, these are just a few of the hostile events at schools that have occurred over the past 20 or so years. Today, we're joined by three school safety experts who will share how they're deploying rapid access programs in partnership with local law enforcement and what it takes to set up an effective tactical response strategy. Today, we're joined by three school safety experts, like I said, Sarah Brunson, Scott Merrill, and Bill Schwaneman. Thank you, Bill, Scott, Sarah, and Scott for joining us today. And we're going to start with each speaker introducing themselves, learning a little bit about themselves and their school district. So, Bill, let's start with you.
Well, I'm the electronics maintenance service manager for Manatee County School District in Florida. Um, we have a district that's about 60 facilities, 60 campuses, a little more than that as far as buildings, about 54,000 students. Started at this position 20 years ago and grew into this part of it. My major responsibilities are security cameras, security alarms, access control, locksmiths, and fire alarms.
Great. Sarah, why don't you go next?
Yeah, my name is Sarah Brunson, and I'm from Nebo School District in Spanish Fork, Utah. We are central Utah, located right on the Wasatch Front, about an hour south of Salt Lake City. We have 48 schools, probably a total of 60 locations with all of our other support buildings. And then we have about 40,000 student enrollment. So not quite as big as Bill, but big, and we are rapidly growing here on the Wasatch Front. So my background is actually from teaching. I was a teacher for many years and then became a school principal and administrator. And 2 years ago, Utah passed the first big bill for school safety, which created a whole new program with the Guardian and the Armed Educator programs and things like that. And so I was asked to take that on, and this last year absorbed risk management as well. So that's kind of how I came to get to work in this whole safety security realm of education.
Sounds good. Scott?
Yeah, my name is Scott Merrill. I'm the Director of Security for the Lake Elsinore Unified School District. I began my role in July of 2023. Prior to that, I worked 26 years for the Orange County Sheriff's Department, retiring as the captain in charge of the Criminal Investigations Bureau in Orange County, California. I oversee basically safety and security for the district. I liaison with first responders, law enforcement, fire, city emergency management, oversee our campus supervisors, sort of. I don't have, they don't directly report to me, but I kind of provide guidance and training for them as well, and then provide training for district staff and employees and families related to safety and security type issues. So.
Great. Well, some states, such as Utah and Texas, have requirements for key boxes for law enforcement, while there are numerous other states with pending legislation. However, many districts are being proactive in implementing programs before any mandates come down. Could each of you explain what led you to start an Xbox program for law enforcement? And Sarah, I want to start with you because I believe you had a hoax or swatting incident that raised the concern.
Yeah, we did. We had a spotting incident 3 years ago at one of our high schools, but before we ever knew it was a hoax, I mean that literally took nearly up to an hour to really figure out it was a hoax, but our response time was under 3 minutes with all of our local law enforcement. But really, what it did is it spearheaded um, this collaboration between all of our local agencies. We are really lucky. We work among 6 local agencies, so 5 city law enforcement and fire agencies, and then we have a county as well. So, and we have schools in all of their jurisdictions and buildings in all of their jurisdictions, and it really became a collaborative um, response to something that could have been worse than it was, but it taught us a lot. And so, really, it was district leadership, school administrators, all of our facilities and operations team, and then our local first responder agencies, law, fire, EMS, that said, we've got to come up with a better system um, to help make sure that we all communicate and we're all on the same page. So that really kind of drove it. We've implemented a few other things on top of our KnoxBox program, but we can get to those in some of the guiding questions.
Sounds good. How about you, Scott?
I neglected to mention this. Our district's about 20,000 students, and we have approximately 32 facilities. That's schools and support facilities. I have experience with Knox boxes, working patrol, working for the sheriff's department before. So we would respond to incidents and stuff like that. We would have keys to the Knox boxes. We can get into the gates that we needed to get into, the buildings that we needed to get into. Earlier this year, we had actually it was a swatting call as well at one of our high schools. And a lockdown was initiated. It was a kind of an interesting one because they came in and the call came in to dispatch and they said that the principal had been shot and he was down, which was funny because our SRO was standing next to the principal when they got the call, and we still followed procedure and went into lockdown. Um, we have Knox boxes on our facilities, but we found out that in a lockdown situation, everybody's locked out, lights out, doors locked and everything. That our local law enforcement did not have access to the Knox boxes, and those you might not know, fire stages until a scene's rendered safe. Well, they're staged a mile away. Those Knox box keys, and they don't have access to them. They can't get into them. So it's kind of an after action review of an incident that kind of determines why we needed to go this particular route. We're fortunate. We only have one law enforcement agency for our entire district. We don't have to deal with 5 or 6, or I know some counties have like 30 different agencies based on the size of them. And we have one fire agency, but that fire agency basically handles thousands of square miles, and they don't set up their Knox boxes, it seems like, to coordinate with the local law enforcement agency in that particular jurisdiction. So that incident led us to looking into the law enforcement Knox box program.
How about you, Bill?
Not no particular incident other than Parkland itself that initiated a lot of thought, and then some of the regulations that came out from the state shortly after that, none of which had anything to do with the Knox boxes, but it had us looking very hard at schools' safety and security. And one of the ways we could combat and collaborate with law was to do something with the Knox boxes. I think it was one of your folks that initiated a conversation between us and fire regarding that, and we brought law enforcement into it. The blue box, as it was called for a short time, was destined to be the law box. We've got 4 different law enforcement agencies, 1 county, 3 city, 8 different fire districts for everything that our schools sit in. So it was some effort to get everybody on the same page, and we're still working through some things, but we're very well on our way.
But let's stay on that topic because to get a successful program off the ground, you have to have the right people in the room when starting the program. Who exactly did you have local police, sheriff, state troopers, school leadership? Who was in the room when you guys started off your program? And Bill, why don't you
School,
continue?
but initially it was our own in-house security and safety team. After discussing it over with you guys and working through a few things, law enforcement was approached, and all the key folks from the 3 city departments and the 1 county department. Sheriff's Department sent 2 or 3 reps, same with PD in all the locales. And we all sat in the same room and discussed basically things like logistics, location, um, things like that.
How about you, Scott? You said you're lucky enough to only have one law enforcement agency. Did you have any neighboring agencies or anybody else other than that you got involved?
No, and we coordinated. So after the incident, when realized deputies, our SROs have keys to the facilities, it's because they're stationed at our facilities and we work with them on a regular basis, that we contract with the department. They went to check. They have KnoxBox keys, but found out that those keys that they had only worked on its 7 sites. So it didn't really help us when we have 30 something sites. So sat down with the local fire authority and sheriff's department to find out, hey, who has keys? What keys do you have? Why are they not all keyed the same? And that's when we found out that based on the area where fire had the Knox boxes, they were keyed differently. And the response, of course, from fire is we have them on the engines. Well, that's fire season. Those engines are often gone in other areas and helping out, and we needed law enforcement to be able to get into our facilities when fire isn't available. So going through the Knox box keys that the local law enforcement had, we realized that we needed to have something additional for our responding officers and deputies to get into the sites.
How about you, Sarah? You kind of addressed it already, but oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, Sarah. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, what we started with was kind of that collaborative group of people, but we also had 2 separate systems kind of running, and one with law enforcement that we have internal boxes. They're just a smaller box. They're coded. There's one district master code to it that's listed in all of the databases for all of the law enforcement agencies. We work with 2 separate PSAPs, so they also have all that information. All of our local agencies also have full key card access. So when a new officer comes on in an agency, they notify me. We create them a key card that gives them access to all of our buildings 24/7. Again, we have great trusting relationships with our local agencies here. But we were noticing our law enforcement protocols that we had in place and our fire protocols that we had in place, we almost felt like we were creating some of the tension between the 2, because some of our buildings, our newer buildings, as we've done new builds, they all have a Knox box built into them, but some of our older buildings didn't have them. So fire had their keyway, and at all those boxes, we would have one master key to get into the school, where law enforcement didn't have any keys until they entered in the school already. So we needed to find a way to kind of marry both of those worlds and really working together to like come up with some agreements of like, hey, if this agency wants to play nice with this agency, then we're able to help get everybody access to all of our buildings. So it's kind of where we came from.
I can imagine that some of you guys had some education you had to do with school leadership, explaining to them that, law enforcement may not or probably does not have access to the firebox. Did any of you guys run into pushback or confusion among school leadership?
Not,
Uh, I mean,
Go ahead, sir.
absolutely not. So, our school leaders brought it to our attention, and I work closely with facilities and maintenance and operations departments. Uh, and when we discussed it, we realized, hey, this needs to be addressed. We need to make sure that they get in like a lockdown type situation. And when we presented to our board of trustees, fortunately, we had one who's former fire and completely familiar with the system. And he was excited and glad to hear that we're doing that and moving forward with it so they have access to get into the buildings.
Yeah, and we didn't have any pushback from our school leadership. In fact, they were a key part of it at the very top levels. It was some of the discussions like Sarah had with 8 different fire districts with 8 different locks on their Knox boxes. That's where we started to come back with a single key that district owned, and then we would supply that to law enforcement, locate some additional boxes, and slowly convert the fire departments over so that they're all in the same key. And we are about 2 weeks away from that being complete, so that everybody is on the same page, same key. But it's our key, so that they'll carry one for their own district and one for the school district.
A question I get asked a lot is from a school, do I set this up for the school? Does the school district set it up or does the county set it up? And I say yes, because really, I live outside of Raleigh. There's a Raleigh school district, but we're in the Wake County school system. So do you guys have any recommendations, or at least how did you set it up for law enforcement? Is it by school district or by county, or is it one and the same for you guys?
For us, it's all one and the same. We're the only school district in this county, so we just deal with the different law enforcement jurisdictions in there as far as key control and things like that. But it's one district. Um,
Anything you want to add, Sarah, Scott? Or?
No,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. Sorry,
no,
Scott.
you, Sarah, go.
I was going to say we are one of 3 districts within our county, so we have just set it up as a district program, and then we work with the agencies that serve our district.
Yeah, we pretty much are doing the same thing. I mean, our county is huge, and we have I don't even know how many districts we have. Got to be in the hundreds. So we set it up as a district, and our district covers 3 different cities, I guess. But we're the only ones in that city. So um, yeah, we sorry about that. We already we're set up as a district, not as a county.
In one of the questions I get into, why can't they just use that fire department box on front? One of the reasons why is location. Fire departments need their box in the middle of the night when there's no key holder there. Being at the front door is very convenient for them. For a tactical response by law enforcement, when they've got all that adrenaline and the shields, long guns, they don't want to be fumbling with a box that could be in the line of sight of the shooter, at the front. So we've seen school districts get pretty creative on box placement for law enforcement, such as the 27J school district in Colorado put some at the front marquee of the school. And we've seen other school districts put the boxes at the gym entrance of the school, which is typically at the back or side of the school, but typically no windows there. Bill, I know that you came up with a creative spot, I believe, to put your boxes. Is that correct?
because every school has one, the dumpster enclosure seemed to be a place that was typically out of sight of the main entrance of a school. That's not something you stick out roadside so everybody sees it. So it gives them a tactical advantage, and it's uniform throughout almost every one of our schools. That way they know immediately where to go. Some of them are behind fencing, but they're working with us. We're getting some padlock keys so that they can manage that. Not a Knox padlock, but a different kind of a padlock that they'll have keys to if they need to get through some of those closed areas. But yeah, the dumpster enclosure ended up being our second location, if you will, the one for the law enforcement.
How about you, sir?
Yeah, most of ours actually are located in a main entrance area. We kind of took the vision of like if an officer or a first responder has to think about where the box is located, then we've already lost time, right? So we wanted to become more uniform. And in Utah, we have a unique situation where our state security chief, who also works with the State Board of Education, they've already put some laws in place with our law enforcement boxes that require that they're under video surveillance 24/7, and that they need to be somewhere that's visible but also can have some concealment. So again, on our new construction builds or whenever we do a big addition or something, we make sure that we always build that in that can meet those standards and those requirements. But as we've added some of those additional external boxes, we've tried to keep them in a location that would be similar so that we become more uniform as a district on that.
How about you, Scott? As former law enforcement, placement is probably pretty important.
Yeah, so it's nice to have them, and I don't know, maybe we're unique just the way our schools are set up because I mean we have one school, for example, that spans like 10 acres with buildings all over the place and multiple avenues of ingress and egress. So that's something we have to look at when we're doing these Knox boxes. Um, we're looking at the basically entry points from when they get into the school and looking at multiple locations on the campus where we would put them. We have maps. We haven't installed them yet. I don't think we've got them actually delivered yet. We're looking at a summer project to install them. But we'll look on our maps and we'll partner with the sheriff's department when we do place those in a location that provides a good tactical response. You don't want officers rolling up to the front of the school becoming targets to an active shooter that's waiting in the office line and wait for them. Chances are an active shooter is only going to have one individual involved, possibly two, but they can't cover all the entrances and exits. So we're looking at strategically placing them where when they arrive on scene, they can access it without putting themselves at risk and other responding officers at risk.
Another reason why the firebox may be different too is, the only thing the fire department needs is that one external key to get into the door. And then they could go to the fire alarm panel and see what's going on. Law enforcement may need more things, external keys, internal keys, maps, like you said. Bill, what do you guys put into your box and who maintains the contents of that box?
Um, Twofold on the maintaining of. We have a security force that patrols during the evenings and overnight and all weekends. They're tasked with on a regular rotation checking those boxes to make sure they're populated as they should be, et cetera, et cetera. But my locksmiths are responsible for creating the keys that go in these boxes. And we provide master keys. Anything in the school that's keyed differently than a master key, there's very few of those, and a key card for the access control systems at each location. And they'll go in the firebox and the law enforcement box both.
Scott, what do you guys put in your boxes?
We'll do the same thing. We'll have we're actually in the process of moving over, and not all of our doors, of course, classroom doors. We have like 20,000 doors. We can't really do it with all of them, but we're in the process of going out and doing access control. And that would cover like main entries and stuff like that, which will be able to give access to law enforcement or provide a key card that gives access to it, but also will be master keys in there that get them into the doors that they need to get into, the individual classroom doors. But again, that'll be me working with our locksmith determining and maintenance and facilities determining which keys need to be in there and how many sets. Officers don't typically respond in single units, and the amount of time it would take for one officer or deputy with one key to go door to door is just time consuming, and you want to get people in there faster. So it's possible that there's going to be more than one set in there for them to get into quicker access and get the school cleared sooner. So.
How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, very similar. I would just say a couple things that we make sure our maps are marked with are critical utility shutoffs, or which doors go to those shutoffs. Because in particular, law enforcement or fire isn't necessarily going to know where some of those things are, and those are critical locations. We also, in compliance with the Utah laws, we have to have like our standard response protocol in there, as well as our numbering consistency of hallways in our buildings. So on an XY grid access, schools now are mandated to label or number their hallways by that system. So that helps law enforcement um, be directed like through their PSAP. We upload all of our maps and everything digitally. I think I talked about that. And then just marking where like any of the hazard areas are around our buildings and things. But we do the same. We put as much as we can in our KnoxBox, and then again we have that secondary support box that has even additional keys, more maps, things like that.
So that's a good segue to the next question I had, which was I get asked a lot, how many law enforcement boxes should there be on a school? And I kind of think it probably depends on how big the school is, if it's multiple buildings, if it's a large campus, if there's multiple main ways to get into the school grounds. How many boxes, I guess we'll start with you, Scott. Do you just do one per school at a strategic spot, or do you do more than that?
Uh, well, you're right. The size is getting to matter. So our elementary schools, well, we may have two, in two locations, entry points or whatever. One of our high schools, we could end up with seven, just because of how many access points, whether driveways or whatever, that they may need access to. I mean, there's buildings that, again, 10 acres. I mean, it's the number of access points that they're going to be responding to is going to be huge. So it's going to be based on the size of the school, the acreage that the school covers. But like I said, typically most of our elementary schools, which tend to be smaller, probably one, maybe two boxes. High school is going to be a completely different monster.
Sarah?
The same. Yeah. We would, our high schools, we've recently built three brand new high schools. They all have multiple boxes on them, depending on where our main entries are, especially, student parkings in the back end of the building, between a field house, between, a CTE, also building on an outbuilding. So we have multiple boxes in our secondary schools, and then our elementaries, we typically have one.
And Bill, how about you?
That'd be about the same. Elementary school campuses, typically there's one additional plus the fire one out front as we're converting them. High schools and new construction for anything secondary, middle or high, we'll do multiple boxes. So up to three, or in one case, four.
And there's different options on different lock systems on Knox boxes, and I believe you three have three totally different boxes. Scott, you've got the if I'm right, the old mechanical keyway. Bill, you've got the new electronic key approach, and Sarah, I believe you've got the combination locks on your on the Knox boxes. A lot of people don't even know we make those, and up until recently, I was one of those people. So could maybe you guys could decide why you went with what you went with. We'll start with Scott. Was it just the people know how to use the key, so they felt most comfortable with that approach, or?
I think the keys are, yeah, they're easy to track, easy to account for. Number one, they can be issued to the individual personnel, and we can kind of control the access. We looked at the combination lock, but in a heightened event, you lose fine motor skills. You tend to forget that stuff. That code gets out. Probably don't change that code very often. Uh, that's why we didn't look at doing that. Having seen it firsthand, I know that when you're there, you're going to forget something where it requires you to access those fine motor skills and remember something like even a 4-digit code. You're like, okay, I can't remember what it is. So we went with the keys. They'll issue the keys. Law enforcement's, creatures of habit. They know the handcuff key, their car key, and the KnoxBox key. So they'll know that those KnoxBox keys works. That's why we went with the old traditional ones.
Sarah, why don't you go next?
Well, I'm looking at we're in between systems. We just finished our mechanical keys that are belonging to the district and distributed to law enforcement. We've purchased and have instituted in one of our fire districts the eKey, but that's going to grow here quite quickly. We have the material to do it. We're waiting for the fire districts to catch up, and that'll allow us a whole big common ground. We're going to include our separate countywide EMS agency as well as emergency management so that we're all able to use it. The one of the more attractive things about the eKey is the fact that it's got an audit trail to it. One, two, losing one doesn't mean you've lost the world and potentially have to rekey. You're able to just turn it off and issue another one. You're out a couple of $100 as opposed to thousands.
Yeah, and you could even tailor access on who has access to what.
Exactly.
So
We'll
fire
be
could have
sharing
automatic.
access with law enforcement on that, and fire districts will be sharing theirs with us, and it'll all flow nicely. But that has yet to be fully implemented yet, but it is coming for us.
And Sarah?
Yeah, I think we started this. All of our original boxes were fire keyway boxes. So giving all of our law enforcement the control key access, so our controlled access, and every law enforcement officer has their own key card. It does have an override, so if you're in a lockdown, um, so that's obviously what we saw as like their first response. Man, they're going to have that key card right on them. They know how to use it. They're in and out of our buildings quite often with them. We encourage them to test them all the time when they come around. So we used the combo box as our choice because we felt like that's a great way to have a secondary or to say, okay, well, we have no power to this building. We need to be able to access this box. And that way, the code again can be in the databases that our PSAPs use. They can walk the officer through whoever it is to just say, I need the code, and then or the combo, and then our combo will be district wide. So.
We do have a question, Chad, that probably makes sense to address here. It says, we already have a KnoxBox installed. How do I get law enforcement access to this box? Do I not buy a new box or get another key from fire department? If you do want to share the box, and there are some fire departments that only want that one box, there's certain ways that Knox would work with you. One would be called what's called a dual mastered. So you would have what we call our 4400 box. It's a little larger than the standard 3200 series box where you can get two keyways on the same box. One would be for fire, one would be for law enforcement. So they still both have their own programs. The other way would be a submastered, which would be one keyway where the key is, again, different for fire, different for law enforcement, but they work in the same lock cylinder. I would recommend, though, that fire lets law enforcement decide where that box should be placed and what the content should be. So that's what I think. So speaking of fire and EMS, though, did you guys get fire and EMS involved when you started your law enforcement program? Just to let them know what was going on, or did you keep it separate from them? How did you work with them on that? Or did you, Sarah?
Uh,
Oh, go ahead, Bill. You probably have a better program than I do with that.
I don't know. It was a challenge in the beginning. The fire departments were reluctant, to say the least. As time is, it's why it's taken us about 3 years to fully implement because of some of the resistance. But now that everybody is on the same page, you just got to overcome some of the. We found it easier to just provide our own key to them as opposed to having them give anybody else their keys. They're very possessive about that, and understandably so. It's inviting people into other businesses and everything else potentially if done in the wrong fashion. So it took a while, but we were there with law enforcement almost immediately. Fire, it took a little bit to come around.
Scott, did you run into any interesting things?
So I had, when we realized that the deputies only had access to 7 boxes in the entire school district, and the fire authority was stating that because they serve the entire county, they're keyed differently, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because our county is enormous, and I mean I think it goes all the way out to the Arizona border, for crying out loud, and they cover a large area. But if we can't get our law enforcement into the buildings in the area that they serve, that's a problem. And I asked about the keys from fire, and the response is that they're on the trucks. Well, that's nice when you have a fire, the trucks are there, but when they're staged a mile away until an active shooter threat is deemed safe, doesn't really help our first responding, law enforcement to get in the buildings and get in quickly. So I work with them to a point, and then at that point, and we just we're going to get our own boxes for law enforcement so they can get into our buildings.
Actually have an interesting note from the 27J school district, which is, I believe, north of Denver. They're the ones who have the e-lock boxes at the front marquees of the school. He says that just to let everybody know, in case of budgetary constraints, who are unable to install more than one police KnoxBox per school, they supplied 3 responding police department agencies with an eKey for every patrol vehicle to access any of the schools. Then they added a lockdown safe inside the main entrance in each of the schools for additional keys and maps. The lockdown safe inside the schools are the same code as Knox eKey. So thank you, John, for that comment. Let's talk about funding, because that's a good segue to this. How did you guys fund your program? Were there state grants, local grants? Did you use the COPS federal grant program, or did you just have to budget for it? Bill, why don't we start with you?
As a school district, we budgeted for it, and luckily our leadership was able to provide. As a county, which is where we're at now on the eKey, that's a little bigger hill to climb, and that's where grants are going to become a key component. We've offered some of our grant writing services to the county as a whole, melding all 8 of these fire districts in the law enforcement districts so that we can help fund their end of the eKey program that we're looking to implement. But as a district on the mechanical side, what we did was our own money, budgeted. The eKey will be a grant solution for everybody else involved. We've already secured our part of it.
Sarah, how about you when it came to money?
We really have just used district safety and capital budgets for that. So I submit proposals to my leadership, who takes that to the school board. We do it the fall before. So kind of having a long-term vision of it. And then we have built the program in phases. So not taking 1 year, draining a budget, doing the whole project, but we've definitely phased it in. Again, that works for me because when I have the 6 total agencies that I work with, I can work on it city by city, agency by agency. And then we do have the 2 different PSAP or 911 call centers that we work with. So that kind of helped us out as well to say, okay, we're going to start with the Northern Call Center or PSAP, and what cities they serve. We'll do those first or bundle those together. That's helped us a lot with cost. We have been told that there will be some state supported programs through the Board of Education and a lot of our legislation. Utah, that's a hot thing in Utah right now, is a lot of legislation on safety and security in our buildings. And I can appreciate it on one hand, being very proactive, but also kind of that lag in the funding has caused us to have to take on some of these projects. But again, through our proposals and our conversations, definitely having that comprehensive safety plan and sending that to the people who make the decisions about money has allowed us to do that.
How about you, Scott?
So I'm kind of fortunate. Our district, our community, they've passed a safety bond for the school districts to upgrade facilities for safety security, which has led to a lot of upgrades that we've done since I've been here. Communication systems, camera systems, vaping systems, access control, alarms, and this happened to fall under one of the projects that would qualify for that bond measure that was passed. So that's how we were able to fund it. I tried the grant writing process, went with a company. Apparently, we didn't qualify or we didn't get it. So, but fortunately, we had the bond measure that helps us fund this.
And sometimes those state grants are so confusing to figure out that
Yes.
it's not worth the time and effort to apply for the grants. Luckily, a KnoxBox isn't like putting up a camera system or giving 20,000 teachers a panic device or something like that. So hopefully, they could find money for it, every school district. Another question for you, Scott, has to do with I guess who controls the key? So obviously it's up to the school to purchase the box and install the box, but ultimately it's law enforcement using the keys. Do you guys at the school district control the keys, or is it up to somebody at the police department to be the keeper of the keys and the person ordering extra keys and things like that?
Uh, I am the gatekeeper. Myself and our locksmith over in maintenance operations work together. Um, I key control was didn't really seem like a thing when I started here a few years ago. I've kind of set a policy and procedure on that because it just bothered me. But as far as these go, I'm the gatekeeper. I will track every key. I know where they're assigned. Now, law enforcement will be issued keys based on their personnel, and typically law enforcement agencies track the keys that are station related. That that are being issued to deputies and personnel assigned to the station, but I'll know which keys are issued to that station myself.
Um, I guess another question. We have some people here asking about the combination lock and the eKey and things like that. When we send out the recording of the video, we will also include information to the different solutions that everybody on the call are making. So we won't go deep into the technologies, but we will send information out afterward. But there are a lot of people on the call. We had a lot of people register for this, and they kind of included some questions and thoughts. And I'd say 99% of them don't have a law enforcement program right now. So, what advice do you three have for schools, school security leaders like yourself, or administrators, or even law enforcement when it comes to starting a program? Bill, why don't we start with you on this one? What advice do you have for other schools starting a program?
Involve the law enforcement agencies early. Get them on board. They'll be your biggest cheerleaders and probably be able to move the stick. They're respected members of the community and providing a unfortunately very critical service. And this is one way to get that going. Me sitting in front of the board and saying we need this because doesn't carry the weight of the sheriff of the county or the chief of the fire police department. So involve them early, get their backing, and I think that goes a long way.
How about you, sir?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Bill said, when you have great relationships with these agencies that serve, they're serving the same communities that we serve students in. Um, they do have a lot of buy-in into these systems. So one thing I would add is if you do have school resource officers who are employed, ours are employees of those particular agencies, and then our contract is to have them in our schools. But they actually do carry a lot of weight because they live it every day from the law enforcement lens and they can see the inner happenings of what's going on in these schools. But also, they have that educational lens as well that they can say to law enforcement, like, hey, we're not trained this way. We don't think this way. These aren't protocols that we typically use, but in schools, this is what's happening. And so that was a really good bridge for me, is creating a good, strong, tight-knit group of school resource officers who could talk the same talks among all of these agencies. And I really would just say, if you can keep things standardized and you can keep them compatible with the goals of law enforcement or even the goals of fire, which is a little tricky. I think we've all expressed that. That's been a kind of a hiccup in all of us implementing these law enforcement programs. But if you can take your program and just say, okay, we want to really standardize this and we want to make it have compatibility with what their goals are as well, it can't not be successful because they want you to be successful as districts and schools.
Scott, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is it's possible that your jurisdictions, the law and fire work hand in hand, and they do share those keys and they do have access. Find out if your law enforcement has access to it. Talk with fire and see how they control the keys and if they provided access. Fire typically is the ones, I mean, just the way the system has worked over the years, they're the ones who have the keys and the ones who are familiar with it, and they will issue the keys. If your local agencies have access to those boxes, then you're good to go. But ask them if they have access and have your SROs, if you're working for these agencies, verify and go check the boxes at the school sites to make sure that, yes, we do have access and this is what's in them. If not, then that's when you would proceed going with law enforcement, which is where we were at when we realized we didn't have the needed access for our law enforcement partners.
There's a good question in the chat that I meant to ask you guys earlier, actually. But when you guys set up your systems for your school districts, I'm guessing you're talking about your public school districts. Have the private and charter schools come up and said, "Hey, could we be part of your program?" or anything like that? Or did law enforcement bring up the private and charter schools in the early discussion? So how do you handle private and charter schools? Scott, we'll start with you.
It hasn't come up with us. I think we have one, maybe two. And if that's something that they want to partner with us on, and we'll work with them. But right now, it's not something that's come up. And I mean, we don't even have the boxes yet. We haven't installed them yet, so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But again, those charter schools are going to have fire KnoxBoxes. I don't know if they've done their own thing and put their own stuff in place.
Sarah, have you run into this issue at all?
I personally have not, but the way that Utah is structured, we have our state security chief who has assigned sergeants to 8 different jurisdictions. Those sergeants work with our county chiefs over security, and they're who would direct and guide our charters and our private schools through that. And actually, I don't even know on the private, that's a whole different ballgame, but I do know that the charter schools do have that same contact.
And Bill, with the eKey that you guys are going to have, you could actually have different codes for the private and charter schools versus the public schools. So really, the law enforcement can use the same key, and in the software, you just give different access. I'm assuming that's something you might plan on thinking about doing, Bill?
We'll be planning on that. I know with the hard key system that we're currently in, we have provided weirdly through one of the local fire districts. They came to us saying, "Hey, these guys should have kind of the same arrangement with law enforcement. Could you provide?" Which we have. So as a district, we're partnering with some of the local charters and everything else with the hard key, providing that for them. We'll go out and change their boxes with the fire department and make it their key. So that the law enforcement can access those as well. It's not formalized in any kind of memorandums or anything like that, but we've been receptive to it. Very.
Yeah, we do have one comment on here that they do support their charter schools. They purchase KnoxBox and add their KnoxBox to the eKey. So again, the eKey might be a great solution if you're looking to add on private and public schools.
Yep.
Is there anything you might have done differently than or maybe even something you heard today? Is there anything differently you would have done setting up your law enforcement program to make it easier or more effective, do you think? And I know, Scott, you're just in the process of setting it up, but I guess we'll start with you, Bill, on this one. Is there anything you might have done differently or didn't think of after you launched it?
And I don't know that we would have approached anything differently. We tried to be transparent and talk to both law and fire, see if there was any common ground. And at the time, it was kind of widely apart. It's changed dramatically since, and I appreciate that effort from both sides. I guess I didn't expect that, so I think having a conversation with all agencies, not just law, will help kind of smooth the road and make things go a little quicker and more efficiently. That would be one thing I would do differently.
Sarah, anything you do differently?
Honestly, start sooner. Probably started before we did because we do feel kind of this pressure of, we'll get one or two agencies done and then all of the sudden school administrators talk, right? And they'll say, well, when do we get ours? And when is this happening for us? And I just think instead of having it be messaged as like, oh, hey, this is a new system or another system, we could have tweaked our message in the beginning to just say, you know what, this is about making all of our safety systems work together, our control access doors, our limited entries, our all of the things that we're doing to make our schools safer, to just say, this is just another layer. It's not a new program. And I think that maybe would have also, like Bill said, smoothed some things over sooner, but we'll continue to have those conversations both in district leadership and with the outside agencies that we work with.
Anything you want to add, Scott?
Yeah, again, infancy right now, so I don't have anything to see what we do differently.
Okay, well, not to come close to offending law enforcement here, but I've talked to some school security directors who said that when they try to launch a program, law enforcement come back and say, "I don't need a key. I've got the back of my car, the front of the car, and I'll just drive it through the front door of the school to get access." Obviously, especially if it's a swatting incident or a hoax, you want to minimize property damage if it's not needed. Was property damage concerns or the cost of potential property damage a topic for any of you guys when you thought about doing this program and selling it to leadership?
Uh, no, that's funny because I don't know any manager in law enforcement who's going to be okay with their officer driving through a school and causing thousands of dollars of structural damage. Uh, we saw it, which I find ironic, that fire would show up and they would cut locks at the gates to get in, and the keys to the gates were in the KnoxBox that they're supposed to have the key to. So, the cost of that was not something I even thought of.
Sarah, Bill, anything you want to add on that?
No, I would say we didn't, there wasn't a discussion on that. Honestly, if there is an emergency, we know that both law and fire have to get in the way that they have to get in, right? But hopefully, we've given them many options to access our buildings before that damage happens.
Yeah, same. I don't that wasn't in the thought process at all as far as damage to the structures or the buildings.
And just a couple more questions for you guys. One of them has to do with safety drills or active shooting drills. I'm assuming that the starts with law enforcement getting there and using the box, or will be when you get them put up, Scott. Is that going to be part of your regular school drills, or is it already part of it?
Are you asking me?
Sure.
Again, I would hope that that's part of the drill process where they go through and they go through the process. We don't do lockdown drills all the time. I think and they're regulated by what the requirements are. I think twice a year. I don't think it's unfeasible to involve law enforcement or SROs in that process where they go through and do the lockdown drill. There's certain requirements how a lockdown can be lifted, and you're supposed to be going door to door and making sure you got eyes on and stuff like that. Those doors are supposed to be locked and not supposed to be opened except by an administrator and law enforcement in their response. But I would hope once our system is activated that they're using it. Again, our SROs that work for us, they all have keys. Our administration for the law enforcement, they have keys, and the watch commander and supervisors have keys for their units as well. So I would hope that that's part of the drill, yes.
Yeah, we have a question here. It says we share our school campus with a church. Both buildings are at the top of a hill with a very long driveway. Where can we place our box? I guess the easy answer would be work with your law enforcement side where they would like the box, but I'm assuming somewhere down at the beginning of the driveway. Would you guys agree with that, or is there somewhere else that they might want to consider?
Somewhere that's visually, I mean, where they can see it. You don't want them to have to search for it. So if it's at the base of the driveway before they go up, they're going to have the keys when they get up there. Who knows what they're going to run into when they get to the top of that particular hill? But yeah, I would work with law enforcement to determine where you're going to put that.
And we
Agreed.
do have a Bill, anything you want to add?
I was just saying I agree. Yeah.
We got a question about a specific law enforcement agency that says they don't have agreement with Knox. So if a school wants to start a program, the law enforcement really doesn't need a program. They could just contact us. We'll give them the paperwork to fill out and start the program. It's very much different than the fire department program. Fire departments do have the accounts with Knox. On the school side, it's going to be the schools typically that have the account with Knox. So it is a little bit different model, I guess you could say. Um, and I think we've gone through pretty much all the questions or they've been answered. Hopefully, I haven't missed anything big. Any final thoughts from any of you guys? And it seems like we've touched on just about everything, but maybe we missed something you wanted to talk about. Sarah, anything else? Any other words of wisdom?
No, I just think, sometimes we complain about the legislation that we get given, or, there's a constant, oh, great, 60 more pages of additional legislative mandates in this school security and safety. But I think making it a statewide priority has actually helped a program like this because it forces us to be proactive and to move on it knowing okay, I've got 15 other mandates that I need to be working on as well. So this is one thing that I don't say anybody would say was a waste of our funding or a waste of a proposal for funding, that it's more than just the box. Again, it's about the system, and that system hopefully ultimately will minimize time and help us save lives if we ever need to use it.
Actually, I have a one more. The questions are starting to come in all of a sudden. We'll try to be quick. We are the campus police department in the process of working with the campus on developing a KnoxBox program. The campus is always growing and renovating. We have a lot of old buildings and new buildings. What are your recommendations for working with campus administrators and ensuring the police department and fire personnel have the necessary access and keys? Guess regular meetings, Bill, would that be the answer?
Yeah, together if possible. Just involve all parties right on the onset of this, to try to get the buy-in by all parties. Like I said before, it just runs smoother when everybody's reading from the same music. That would be my call on that. Yeah.
Um,
My hope would be that your facilities and maintenance team, uh, look, you shouldn't have. I would hope you don't have 30 different keys to your buildings. I would hope there's a master key that limits the number of keys that are needed for law enforcement to get into the rooms that they need to get into. Hopefully, when you guys are doing these new construction and new buildings, the key layout is the same site wide and district wide, but try and limit the number of keys that are needed. You just, don't want to be going through 30 keys trying to get into different rooms.
Great. We've run our 1 hour, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Here is everybody's contact information. If you have any specific questions for any of us, feel free to send us an email. Schoolentry.com is where you could go to learn more about the Knox school entry for campuses and schools. Again, we'll be sending out more information on the different options as well as a link to the recording of this. I want to appreciate Sarah, Scott, and Bill for all your time today. A lot of great information on a very passionate subject, or a subject that's very passionate to everybody who I think logged into this call today. So thank you very much. I want you all to be safe out there and have a great day.
Thank you.